Hey guys, LuckyHD here, and I've been thinking lately. Alright, I've been really, sitting down, I've been pondering about something in Loomian Legacy specifically, and that is Atlanthean City Part 2, and the absolute just tragedy that this update was. And in this video, we're going to be talking about it because I really do think that Atlanthean City Part 2 did not perform as it should have. Alrighty, so make no mistake, Atlanthean City Part 2 was honestly an extremely good update. I mean, it was probably one of the best updates we have ever seen in Loomian Legacy history. I mean, the story was just phenomenal. The entire just experience, okay, as a whole, was absolutely phenomenal. However, was it worth the 2-year-long wait? A lot of people would say no. Myself included. I don't think any update, no matter the caliber, would have been worth waiting 2 years like that for, right? But for an update that was as hyped up as Atlanthean City Part 2, where is the talk about Atlanthean City Part 2? I mean, if I go to Aranada Trench, there is not a single person other than myself in this entire place. Like, I have literally looked throughout this entire server, and there's not a single person hunting in the grass. There's not a single person literally doing anything in this entire route, which, for something as spectacular and beautiful as this, you would really expect more people to hunt. And this entire situation is going to be the topic for today's video. What went wrong with Atlanthean City Part 2? Well, it's actually pretty interesting, and I have a really good idea of what went wrong and how Loomian Legacy really just dropped the ball on this update's release. Now, we're not going to be going over the obvious things like, of course, the delays, the countless delays, the 2.5 year long wait. Like, we're not going to be going any of the obvious stuff, right? We're going to be going over everything that happened after Atlanthean City Part 2's release, because I think, honestly, that was a little bit more detrimental to this update's longevity in its entirety. The first thing that I want to bring up is just the lack of things to do in Atlanthean City Part 2. I mean, for an update that was worked on for as long as it was, you would really expect there to be more things to do. But all we got is, the Glissadia and Arceros little mini storyline that you can complete, which obviously is really cool. It's fun to soft reset that, but after that, what really is there to do? I mean, obviously, there is hunting out inside of the bottom of the trench, but at the same time, you can't auto hunt, you can't do anything of that sort, so not many people hunt here at all. Like, there has not been a single ounce of content added to Atlanthean City Part 1 or 2 for that matter. All of the promises that the developers said, adding the new arcade machines, adding the Ashgra Ninja replacement, adding all of these features that they said would come after Part 2 or after Atlanthean, we have still yet to even hear anything about. And instead, Loomian Legacy has just opted to continuously pushing out more and more events, which brings me to my next issue, and that is just going to be flat out events. I will say without a shadow of a doubt that events were probably the biggest thing that completely just made this update feel like a fart in the wind, as I described it in my tweet. It really just felt like, all of the events that came out after Atlanthean City Part 2 completely overshadowed the entire wait that we had to go through for this update, and just everything in general. I mean, this update right here came out in November. It came out at the start of November, and the Halloween event followed within 2 weeks of this update coming out. And this event was a completely new thing. It was the Haunted Village. It took an old Christmas concept and completely turned it on its head. Everybody was hyped for this update because they wanted to see, what could Loomian Legacy do with something like this? How could this even, work? And, again, the hype was there, but unfortunately, it caused Atlanthean City Part 2's hype to go down with it. Which brings me to my next thing, and that is going to be timing. This update was probably released at one of the worst times you could have released an update, okay? It was released right after Halloween came out, so obviously they were late on their Halloween event, and they were scrambling to figure out what they could do for a Halloween event. So again, we knew that the Halloween event was coming, and subsequently the Christmas event as well, but with that entire thing, like I had just mentioned, it completely ruined the momentum that we had with this update. I mean, you think about about every single update that we've ever had for any battle theater, I mean, going back to part 1 and part 2 of Gym 2, I mean, we had the little Halloween area, but it was a new story area in the game. It was a new physical location that you could go to, and alongside that, we got more of the story. But even thinking about things like Sephirite City, right? Sephirite City came out, and then following Sephirite City, we got updates to the actual city. We got new things like the Mutagon update, and the little puzzle that ensued with that. And then after that, we got Route 8. Like, the momentum for the story just kept going. However, with Atlanthean City Part 2, the momentum was just completely stopped very early by these events. And these events are not showing any signs of stopping either. We had the Halloween event for a month straight, and then we had the Christmas event, which is still ongoing, and it is probably going to be exceeding a month length in total as well. And, you know, even after the Christmas event, what comes next? Something like the Lunar event, something like the Easter event, or the Cosmere, or Sweet Retreat, or Rainbow, like all of these things that they have to fit in such a short time period from now before we even get to see the next story updates. And I think as a whole, I think Atlanthean City is the first, you know, story update to really just get affected by this, because you think about every other update before this, obviously, you know, it wasn't as bad, all right? There wasn't, you know, as many events that were plaguing it. However, with this new direction that Loomian Legacy has been going in, where it's just event, like, it has got to the point where the events are becoming the main story updates. There are no story updates in Loomian Legacy anymore. This game is just centered around events, and I think in total that is what is poisoning this game's longevity, because we have seen hundreds of thousands of people quit Loomian Legacy, citing their reason for quitting just being the fact that the game is going nowhere. I mean, Loomian Legacy has made their entire focus of this game centered around these big grand events. Like, don't get me wrong, I love Jolly Festival, I think it's really sick, but do we really need all of this for one event inside of Loomian Legacy? Could these resources not be allocated elsewhere into working on a story update? I mean, you even think about stuff in, you know, Pokemon Brick Bronze. Pokemon Brick Bronze had nice little quaint events, and it really wasn't much more than just maybe a new route, or maybe something inside of the grass. Like, it wasn't an entire grand spectacle that had to, you know, completely change the game and, you know, change how everything works. And it really creates a double-edged sword, because now that Loomian Legacy has built up these events to be like this, they can't go back. They can't go back to something like the 2019 Halloween event, where it was just a new route and a couple new reskins, you know, nothing extreme. Like, they can't go back to that because people will not like it. I mean, people are not going to like an immediate transition from something like this, you know, great event that we have here to something a lot more tame. Is there anything that Loomian Legacy can even do in this situation? Well, if you ask me, there is really not much. They have completely shot themselves in their own foot by, you know, building up these grand events only to, you know, not actually do story updates and not put all this time into stuff like that. Instead, focusing on, you know, where the money is, literally right here, when instead they could be getting the same amount of money from actually making their story updates, you know, great updates and including features that can make them the same amount of money. But again, will we ever see that? I truthfully do not think so. I think what Loomian Legacy can do is start to, you know, make these events less and less spectacular, okay? You know, we don't need a whole new map. Maybe this year, instead of having a new Halloween event or a new Christmas event, maybe we could just see a new route with some new Loomians, and, you know, maybe you could throw in some reskins too for the time being, but we don't really need something that big. Circling it back around, I really do think that it is honestly a complete, you know, just tragedy that Atlanthean City Part 2 is, for the most part, forgotten. I mean, you know, there's nobody talking about this update anymore because all of the focus is on these events right now, because that is currently what's happening. And again, I really think that that is unfortunate, you know, just based on how long we had waited for this update and how great of an update Atlanthean City Part 2 was. This is the first example of one of the story updates just getting completely overshadowed by the events. And I honestly, if Loomian Legacy keeps this up, I really don't think this is setting up a good future for the game. But obviously, I hope that, they can get all this stuff figured out. I really, really want to see, all of this succeed. But for the time being, those are my thoughts about it. Let me know yours down in the comments below, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.